Hello everyone, welcome back to History Behind the Games. Mafia Definitive Edition caught my eye when it was coming out. The other two games in the franchise were good, but this one hit a particular chord with me. You see, in the days before Steam, when I was a teenager, we used to have to buy PC games with their discs and install them directly onto your computer. That's when I first got my hands on Mafia. Switching between all three discs and waiting the 2 hours it took to install, I was taking on an experience that I would play over and over again. I fell in love with the game and the eventual franchise. I got attached to all the characters and what they went through. When everyone else's favorite, Mafia 2, came out with a deservedly massive fan following, I realized there were many new players who did not experience the first game. In Mafia 2, when Vito and Joe are hard up for money and they needed to go whack a Mafia rat, my brother and I instantly put two and two together and knew they were talking about Tommy Angelo. I imagine for those who also played the first game did the same, while the new players to the franchise experienced the mission as Vito would have. It was just another job, nothing special. That's a really talented bit of writing and character point of view from the development team. 18 years later, when Mafia Definitive Edition came out, I bought it. I would be nowhere without your support. I would love to bring our passion for history to others. Please click the like button and subscribe, as it is free and it helps out the channel immensely. Click that bell button to be notified every time I upload, and consider supporting the channel even more by becoming a patron. Thank you to all my subscribers and those of you here for the first time. Now, let's get to the video. Combat is a big part of the franchise. The Definitive Edition has a smoother format than the original PC game, using that of Mafia 3. It's pretty simple. You point at things, shoot at them, and then they die. You can use cover better in this game, but things like the combat roll and others have been taken out. Driving has also gotten better. For example, the infamous racing level, which was so daunting in the original, seemed almost like a breeze this time around. All the movement mechanics otherwise are straightforward and easy to pick up. But more than anything, it's the story that really makes the game. Each character is given great depth and personality. While I had fallen in love with the original and was hesitant that I wasn't going to like the new voice acting just because it wasn't the same, the new voice acting grew on me. They didn't change the original characters too much, and gave them deeper emotions so that we got a better sense of who they were. Oh, on a side note, the character who probably changed the most though is Vincenzo. The original had him pegged as a more calm, silent type that knew his way around weapons and knew everything about the family. He still knows about weapons in the family this time around, but he is much louder, talkative, and energetic. It's not bad, but it's really different from the original character. Lastly, the city itself is not that interactive. You can drive around, see things, but many buildings you cannot enter and are closed off. It's not like GTA if that's what you were thinking. This is the same as the original, but since it wasn't merely a graphics upgrade, but a full-on remake made from scratch, it would have been nice to add in more interactive features to the city in the free ride mode. And actually, it's less interactive than the original. While they added motorbikes, they took away the ability to use trains and the electric rail cars, which was an interesting way to get around the city. That I didn't like. They could have added more to the free ride, I think, but it's what it is. But the city is more lively, with more NPCs and more details and character. Other than that, the game has a great story and easy to pick up gameplay. Lost Heaven is loosely inspired by several large cities, such as New York and San Francisco, but primarily Chicago. That's why everyone speaks with Midwestern accents in the game, by the way. While the story is entirely fictional, it is based on several aspects of mob life and actual events back in the 1920s and 30s. So let's take a look at those details. In one of the missions, Tom has to help a safecracker get into a secure location, but the safecracker is from Sicily and only speaks Italian, which Tom does not really understand. It leads to some funny interactions, but makes us notice how weak the connections were to the old country. Don Salieri can speak Italian, probably by virtue of his age and position, but Tom and some of the other characters may know a few words and customs, but that's it. They are entirely American in culture, with only the slightest idea of what the old country was like. During the first half of the game, there was a huge feud between Don Salieri and Don Morello for control of the city. Being a Midwestern city, with two rival gangs going at each other, it's almost surely inspired by the real-life Chicago rivalry between Al Capone and Bugs Moran. During the late 1920s, Moran controlled the north side of Chicago and Capone the south. Prohibition and the illegal sale of alcohol made the mobsters insanely rich. They tried outcompeting each other business-wise at first, but very soon, things began to get violent. Back and forth the feud went until the infamous Valentine's Day Massacre, almost certainly planned by Capone, severely crippled Moran's gang, but it also eventually led to the downfall of Capone as well. The game also shows the transition from local illegal business rackets and neighborhood protection to the adoption of other, larger forms of illegal businesses during and after the Prohibition era. Prohibition was born out of the progressive movement of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. There were a lot of crimes that had alcohol involved somehow, and some at the time thought that if you got rid of alcohol, you would also get rid of those crimes and have a more productive society. Makes sense, right? So Prohibition gained popularity and was eventually adopted in 1919. Problem is that practically everyone turned into a criminal overnight, driving people to make their own alcohol in their homes, or spending large amounts of money to buy it, which mobsters were only too ready to supply. The cash cow went on for over a decade, meaning that many crime gangs, also known as families, became larger organizations. In many small parts of the game, you get a sense of the past and how things are changing in the present. Another small detail is Cuba. Cuba has a lot more mob history that I'll get into in other videos, but for now, Cuba was a popular travel destination for many Americans during the Prohibition era, precisely because it was close and alcohol was legal. We can see several adverts in Salier's bar about traveling to Cuba. Many of the adverts were created by alcohol companies to drive up sales. The US government, however, realized that it could cut down on illegal crimes related to supply and distribution of alcohol and make more money by taxing it rather than prohibiting it. So the amendment was repealed. The boom was over, but now the families and crime organizations would use their new wealth and power to push other ventures. Drugs became the growing business within mob organizations, although it was met with some hesitance, fear, or flat-out rejection by older or traditionally minded members of the mob. This is all depicted in the game. Historically, this hesitance has led to the violent overthrows of family leadership that wouldn't get on board with this very profitable illegal business. I give the gameplay and story a 3.5. It is easy to play, but it is missing a few features that would make the gameplay rather more enjoyable, but the story itself is excellent. I give the history a 4. While it is depicting a purely fictional story, all the elements, the details, the historical tidbits, and inspirations are all spot on. The writers and developers did their homework when creating this game. And that's the episode for today. Thank you all for watching. I'm Eric the LonePineWolfman, and remember gamers, never stop learning.